it's said that there are countries in the world that have assumed the big brother mentality. Countries that would want to prefect other countries. Yet in their own countries, there are violations that their people endure almost every day.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
And one of the countries is the United States of America, which has assumed the big brother mentality to prefect other countries to the extent that they see it fit to impose sanctions on countries just because they think that they are doing things that are not according to what they want. And we see America also getting to a point where they threaten Zimbabwe to say that Zimbabwe poses a threat to America. And we wonder how it is possible that Zimbabwe, with its size, can pose any threat to a big country like America. And it is for some of these reasons why they sanctioned Zimbabwe. But one of the things why they sanctioned Zimbabwe was to effect a regime change so that they can put in a government led by people that are pliant, people that can pander to the whims and caprices of the United States of America, people that can allow America to come and exploit our resources. And because the people of Zimbabwe have been resilient and they have not accepted the template that had been introduced by the Americans, we have remained with one government, one party in power, which is the party that they wanted to remove. And we have seen this happening in many other countries, where when America, Britain, and its allies, they would want to remove a government, they introduce a political party that would then, which they would then work with. And in some cases, they even fund terrorists, they even fund rebels. And we have seen this across many countries. We have even seen America creating a facade in some countries where, like for instance, Libya, where they've spoken about democracy and human rights abuse and the abuse of rule of law and so on. But when we look at the state of the Libyans right now, and look at what has happened in Iraq and other countries, including Afghanistan, you will see that America is doing this for its own interest, to serve its own ego, particularly those of the leaders of America. And we can't have a world in which we have people with such kind of big brother mentality, where they would want to run or rule all countries. And once you fail to comply with what they want, then they punish you with sanctions. And I think the onus is on countries on the continent of Africa and the world over to deny or to refuse a situation where one country assumes such power like the one that America seems to be having at the moment, where they think, be it in the healthcare system, be it in education, everywhere, including even become the champions of democracy, when in actual fact, in their own country, they are not doing it according to the book. We should be in a position to say no, as countries in the region and as countries on Africa and in the world, because that in itself, one day we may not see we may see a number of wars emerging on the continent or in the world because of only one particular country that has assumed this big brother mentality. The fact that there was no one who was tried for any wrong that he or she had done, the sanctions were unilaterally imposed. There were allegations which were made: human rights abuse, rule of law, change electoral laws, reform, and so on. But who decides on what to reform in a country? Who decides on what should happen in a particular country? I recall there is somebody who said that democracy is not like Coca-Cola, where you need one recipe in order for Coca-Cola to taste what it is today throughout the world. Because of the differences in the environment, the differences in the culture, and many other differences, democracy cannot be the same everywhere in each country. We should be allowed to apply what we feel is right in our country and elsewhere. And the Americans do as they feel, as they say America is for the Americans, and let it be the same with all other countries, and do things according to their dictates, as long as the basic principle of democracy is being followed. There can't be one template, one recipe like Coca-Cola for countries to have democracy in the world. And that, I think, should ring in the ears of many of our people, that the template that America uses is not a template that can be used in Zimbabwe. It cannot be a template that can be used in South Africa and anywhere else in the world, because circumstances, the environment, the culture, they differ from one country to the other. But more importantly, to answer to your question, if ever there were any transgressions that the people of Zimbabwe had done, or individuals, they should have been brought before the courts, tried, and if found guilty, then sanctions should have been imposed. But none of that took place, hence the illegality, the immorality of these sanctions, and the deception that is behind these sanctions, because we believe that so strongly that the issue of human rights, the issue of the rule of law, the issue of when they talk about democracy and so on, these were fronts that were being used. Yet the main agenda was to effect a regime change. They were not, and they still are not happy with the current party that is in government at the moment. They wanted to change. So they brought these issues in order for them to effect a regime change. But unfortunately, the people of Zimbabwe were much cleverer than the Americans.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewanfo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.